Good morning. Charles Buck.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Evidently, I own this piece of property next to hers, leaving this. Yes, sir. We're going by what your input is. Or you want it to remain commercial? Yeah.
And that's fast. You are?
Yeah, here.
Oh.
Good. We're just giving a recommendation. It's not our.
So should I just get up and ask my same questions to the commissioner?
I just I'll do a presentation and then just give
How's it feel to be a short timer? I know, I was gonna ask if this was it for you. And it's all Casual Fridays for you. Good for you. Thank you for your service. Yeah.
Please. It's the first time you do it. Do it right here.
But it needs, it's ready, it's winding down. Every Oñate, or the scroll formerly known as Oñate. No, Highway 70.
Oh, yeah.
I said the school formerly known as Oñate, now it's Oregon Mountain High School.
I saw that the other day.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Tracy Turk. I remember that.
So on the minutes, we have a correction. Dr. Zuniac made a motion, and so we just have to make the corrections.
What's it look like here?
Right here where it says Dr. Zuniac.
So what happened was, see how it's blank?
Oh, yeah.
And then here, you realize that I took the whole thing. So that's how it was.
So as corrected.
Anyway, everything going?
Good, good.
Too many. Huh. Yeah.
Did you get his letter? Well, it's the only case that we have. No, DeBlanc.
Wow.
I told him to come at 9:30.
How are you feeling?
Well, it's a zone change, it's from commercial to residential.
So you had
Because
COVID?
they can't.
Yeah, really.
Yes, some of them's like.
Yeah, of course.
They just can't do residential.
High school.
That's what they want to do.
So we had a correction to the minutes.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
Bob Surley signed your copy,
Yeah.
doesn't have the promotion for us.
We have our correction on the minutes, and it just shows,
Some typed in the promotion.
Some are.
So we'll have a correction.
well, I think it did. But anyway, it doesn't show the full statement.
Do you usually do it?
That's the minutes right there.
No, like, this guy's messed up.
There's the minutes.
So this showed, commission adjournment up here, but it doesn't show the whole thing.
Doesn't have what the motion was.
So it's an omission,
Okay.
but I mean, so whatever you want to do with that.
When that comes up, we'll just approve it as corrected.
Well, we'll just say it's we'll ask for a correction. And then we'll vote on the corrections then. Okay.
I gotta move right in chair. I don't like these. You know what? All right.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of December 9th, 2021 at 9 a.m. We only have one case for today, and I would request that you put your phones on silence. I would appreciate that very much. What I'm going to do is every time you come up to the podium to make a statement or whatever you want to say for the record, state your name for the record and where you live, and then we're going to swear you in. And at the same time, I'm going to allow you to take your mask off because we disinfected everything, okay? And it's very difficult to hear sometimes with masks on and everything like this. So, and then when you leave, please put your mask back on, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you very much for attending, all right? We'll start now with a roll call of officers, please.
Commissioner Zargis,
Here.
Commissioner Thurston,
Here.
Commissioner Herrera,
Here.
Commissioner Montañez,
Here.
Commissioner Lear,
Here.
Vice Chair Zerniak,
Here,
and Chair Acosta.
Present. Okay, item number 2, approval or changes to the agenda. The chair entertains the motion.
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November the 18th, 2021. Motion entertains the motion.
I'll move that approve with the amendment that the motion made by Commissioner Zerniak be included in the minutes.
Okay,
The copy we have does not include that.
all right. Does everybody understand the motion? All right, okay.
I'll second it, no.
And we have a second on the motion. Any further discussion? No discussion? Okay, roll call, please. Well, actually not. I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Item number 4, old business. Luis, any old business? All right, thank you. Item number 5, new business, case number, well, it's actually, Doña County, it's no case. Actually, Doña County initiated zone change. Request to correct the zoning map error for property zone C1, neighborhood commercial. Are you ready, Luis? By the way, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners, everybody. Yes, our case before us today, case number CZ 21-011 is a county-initiated effort, if you will, for the zone change. And it's a zone change proposal.
Oh, yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Luis Marmolejo at 845 North Motel Boulevard for a short time.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So basically, this is a proposal from a zone change from C1 neighborhood commercial to D2 medium-density residential. We're the ones initiating it, the county. It's at the location, it's on Hanger Lake Road and Baton Memorial West. Approximate area, I call it the project area, and that's what I'll refer to during this presentation, is about 10 and a half acres. We're recommending approval, obviously not all, if you've looked at your analysis, not all properties are requested to convert over to a residential. We're coming in under what's called the change of mistake rule, which is in our code, allowed by the code, 350-203E. And basically, I'll quote it, and this is all that's in there. Change of mistake rule: in the event of a zoning classification error by the county on the official county zoning map, the county shall correct the error through a county initiated zone change at no cost to the applicant. And that's what's occurring here. The zone change is proposed to a D2 zone, which allows single-family set-built homes, mobile homes, duplexes, residences, and related residential support uses. One of the reasons, not the only reason, is because a D1 would create a numerous lots that would end up being what you call legal non-conforming, below minimum lot size. The D2 allows them to get down as small as 6,000 square feet and something like that. If you want to build on something less than 3/4 of an acre, obviously you'd have to go through NMD and incur some of those costs. So we've got photographs back from 1983, and you saw one in your analysis. It shows residential development began to occur within those boundaries of the project area. And actually before that, there's some that go a little bit further. I couldn't print it or put in the analysis because for some reason that year, it just wasn't printing correctly. During the mapping of the ETZ back in '89, this project there was zone EC1. And we believe they did take into account those existing residences that were already there. During the transition, if you recall, from the ETZ to Unified Development Code, most all the properties that were already map zoned, we just carried them over. We carried the existing zoning, whether it was residential, commercial, industrial, it just carried over. They came under a new designation with some added allowed uses on there. So we believe that it carried over as just oversight. It was just not caught. Wasn't caught back then, way back in the early on, and it wasn't caught during the transition. So I call it the conflict. It was discovered that what occurred is when one day this resident came in and was inquiring about a mobile home installation, a second mobile home on her property. I believe it was for some family member. And we went through, like they typically do, they come in, we talked to them, and that's when it was found that we couldn't allow a second dwelling because it was zoned commercial. It doesn't allow you, the zoning won't allow you to increase or a non-conforming property. And so that's where the discovery came in. And when we looked at it at a bigger aerial view, you'll see in a minute, all this little project area, there's a lot of residential on it, with the exception of one or two. And so we said, let's do a friendly, what I'll consider a friendly zone change. Somebody wants to come in, they won't have that problem anymore. They can enjoy of being able to bring in a second dwelling or add on to what they've got already without any problems. Again, all the properties within project area have some residential development on them, either site-built mobile homes or other subordinate uses. The current zoning, again, does not allow residential uses or expansion thereof. So that's why we believe in a corrective action is justified so that the residents within the project area can enjoy residential improvements to their properties. This is a project area right here, all the C1. Okay, this is just, I call it, it's kind of weird, but This industrial zoning right here has been there also, goes way back, way back. And you'll see in some photographs here in a minute that it's a buffer that does separate this industrial from the residential areas here in the project there. On the left-hand side, it's city, it's a city, it's within the city limits. This large parcel here to the left is privately owned and it's zoned commercial. There's nothing on it. It's still barren. Down here in this area, it's state land. Take a real good look at this, please. Again, residential. This property right here, it's, they're doing some industrial type of use on it, and which probably doesn't, it wouldn't conform to the current zoning or the proposed zoning. I never got any comments, received any calls from these residents, and you'll see when we sent out the letters of notification, but you'll see residential. These are the existing roadway infrastructure, if you will. Dirt roads. Here's the dirt roads throughout. Here is the industrial existing. Somewhere around here they have a gate, or right here that they go in and go out, and they do use it. You can tell that it's being used that way. Battelle Memorial, obviously it's a collector. And we at first, we're thinking, well, thinking about it, that the zoning would be appropriate as commercial along these areas. But we just decided to go with what is being proposed. And again, we did get feedback on certain areas that they're not requesting to be zoned commercial. And there, a larger view, if you will, here's the city limits, federal, here's some D2s in this area. Again, the industrial here, there's this part of it is vacant, but here's where most of the activity is. It's like a junkyard, recycling center. Here's the plans and policies that are required for the approval. We've gone through those, we've met those. So again, back in, this now is the notification that took place, started back of April of this year. April to July, we did receive some phone calls from some residents. On September 23rd, we did have a host a community meeting here in the chambers. We didn't receive any attendees. I could understand that, the way things are nowadays, and it was late, kind of in the evening. And for this meeting, we did mail stuff out on the 15th of November. The 3 mailings, 32 letters of notification combined were mailed to the property owners within the project area, and their notification ads were placed in the Las Cruces Sun News. Signs were posted out on site, and the agenda was posted on the website. So during this notification process, I did get 3 calls, the Hernandez, and I'll show you those locations in a minute. Mr. Botchin, I hope I said that correctly, and the Staley properties. And those will be reflected in the proposed zoning. And that's basically what it is. This is the Hernandez in this area. Ironically, they got 2 residential homes on it, and one of them is under construction. But they want to remain commercial, so. And then in the upper left-hand side here, I believe they're all family members, not totally, but I think they're related, and they did request to remain commercial, and we're going to honor that. They were notified of the consequences if you want to come in and add a room, bring in a second dwelling, we won't be able to issue a permit because of the commercial zoning if they remain that way. The only other way to do it would be they by then, if this goes, if the zoning is approved here, they would then, and if they remain commercial, they would then have to come in for a zone change, and it would be on their own. So based on the request, meeting the applicable actions of the code and the findings listed below, staff recommends approval of this case to correct the official zoning map. Again, under the change mistake rule, and change mistake rule, in the event of a zoning classification error by the county on the official zoning map, the county will correct the error through a county-initiated zone change and no cost to the applicant. I think the case is there that there was an oversight from the beginning, back as far as, before the ETZ was adopted. And even during the ETZ, on the adoption part of it, on the transition, there's over 3,000 square miles in the county. Not all of them are a lot of them are state, a lot are federal, but there's a sleuth of properties throughout that were rezoned. All the private properties were rezoned. There's no way to capture everything. There's no way. The way it was done, I call it a mass rezone. We just carry things over. It was map zone, we carry it over. There's no way to go out in the field to look at every location and give it a new zone. We had to carry over the existing, especially in areas that were already mapped, like the ETZ. And I should look at the total area at that time, but so it just carried over. So if there was already an error in the area, that error carried over. And this was discovered just through the process of somebody coming in and wanting to bring in a second dwelling. We couldn't do it. And so I consider this really a friendly zone change. And these are the findings. Our typical findings, it's outside of any incorporated municipal zoning authority. The commission has jurisdiction to review this case and give recommendation of final approval. The aerial photographs show from 83 residential development already occurring in the area. And during the transition, again, an oversight occurred that it wasn't taken into account. It was an oversight on the existing residential properties. And so the zone change request is authorized under subsection 352(3)(e) of the code. And I think most importantly, the zone change is a benefit to those within the project area. Benefit to those properties within the project area that are not opposed, as they will enjoy residential development when it's necessary on their property. Real quick, this is coming off of Baton Memorial West onto Ivory Wing Lane. On the left-hand side is that industrial zone. These are, I call them excess cars that I don't know whether they're gonna take them inside or whatever, but they're out there. And back here's that wall. There's a wall back here, and the majority of the activity is behind the wall. There's an existing residence, and this is at an intersection, still looking off of Ivory Wing Lane. Again, on the right-hand side is the buffer, if you will, to the industrial area. And these are the homes towards the very end, the northeast corner of the project area, where there's some industrial activity. It looks more of a yard than anything else. These are the two homes as you were driving in. Again, these people have chose to remain commercial. However, there's two homes on there that they're rehabbing, and obviously they're going to remain residential. I seriously doubt if there's even permits for them for what they're doing. There's a sign on Ivory Lane. This back here is a residential properties. This is looking south on White Wing Road. It's the one that bisects the project area north and south. Again, residential to your left. You'll see residential to the right, and and the roadway system. This is Hanger Lake Road on the far northeast section of the project area. Where I'm at, the roads, they just recently resurfaced it, but about where I'm standing is where the resurfacing ended. And on the left-hand side is those residential areas that opted out of being, this area for sure, of being rezoned to residential. They've opted in to stay in within commercial. There's another sign. This is Hanger Lake Road looking east. Again, large, but still residential. And this is at the corner of Hanger Lake Road and Baton Memorial West. Looking north, here's Hanger Lake Road, and this is where they did this is what did that resurfacing, and I don't know why, but they stopped here at the intersection. Again, really residential. And that's the end of my presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Any questions of staff?
No, but I would like you to go back another slide where you have the aerial showing the homes and everything from the air. That one. Where are you, is it Hanger Road is the one that you just showed that has been redone?
Yes, sir. It's been resurfaced. You can see right here, for some reason.
That's the connection there?
Yes, sir. Right from this area back to around here, actually, it's resurfaced. And then the rest of the story, Hanger Lake Road is weird because you got this big arroyo. Let me see what's here.
To the north of it, yes.
Yes, sir. And it kind of stops, and then all of a sudden it jumps, and then it starts again.
Okay. Thank you.
Luis, which parcel made the request?
If my memory serves me correct, it was this parcel right here. Okay. She came once, maybe twice, spoke once to me and spoke once to Albert, and faded away. Has never come back, never requested what they originally came for, and I think things changed for them, so no more. But that's what triggered this whole, caught our attention of that.
So here's the thing that I see. On those parcels that are along Hanger Lake Road, if you're assuming that those are incorrect, right, that there is a mistake there, why wouldn't the county ask for a correction to D2 or D1, D2, I guess?
Well, that's what we're doing.
But those parcels, under this proposal, those parcels won't change. So the mistake stays.
You're absolutely correct. We're honoring and respecting their wishes, knowing that we've explained to them to a certain extent what the consequences are if they don't do the zone change. And they're aware of it.
Have you talked to the property owners at the corner of Hanger Lake and Bataan Memorial?
Yes, sir.
And they want to change to D2.
She's here. And she caught me out there one day and held me up for about an hour, which is cool. It was a good conversation, very, very educational conversation, but she is here, and I'm assuming she's got something to say.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Those property owners that opted to remain commercial, will they have the option in the future if they decide to go to D2?
They will, but it'll be at their cost. It'll have
Okay.
to be a zone change.
Okay, thank you.
So under the current zoning, they won't be able to change anything.
They can't even come in with a addition. Because what they're doing, they're enlarging what legal non-conforming order. You can't expand on it. It's not allowed. And that was, that's how we discovered this thing is they came in and somebody wanted to bring in a second dwelling.
So currently, they're non-conforming. Yeah?
I think it's safe to say that because obviously there literally is, and you see it in your analysis, that's a 1983 photograph. And there used to be Army barracks out there from what I understand. In fact, I think these two homes there, if you will, they're old barracks that they've been rehabbed. So there's photographs that go further back and it shows, black and white, they're cool. And the residential out there. With the industrial here, ever since as well. Now, even if, either way you look at it, it's kind of weird because to go to residential zoning, you say to yourself, okay, well, you're squeezing in a residential zoning area between an area within a city that's zoned commercial and now within industrial. Yeah, well, that's what's out there right now. And so what we're trying to do is accommodate these people, these folks, that if they want to come in, if they want to bring in something residential for family members down the road, mama, pops, or grandma, grandpa, it's available to them. If not, they won't be able to. They'll struggle with the code.
Okay, Commissioners, any further questions of staff?
So really, what we're doing is the change mistake rule doesn't really apply to the commercial properties, only to the ones that you're suggesting that we change to D2.
Right, and again, that's accurate, yes, sir. Those that want to remain commercial, we're respecting that request. But really, in all, it's up to you all how you want to decide on this. There's residences on those things. They're going to remain non-conforming.
Yeah.
They're going to have problems down the road, which we don't want them to have. And so those that you see in the yellow, to now, I don't know, those who are here, they can speak, obviously going to speak on their behalf. They want to remain the way this map looks now, this proposal. But we're here, and again, I call it a friendly proposal.
Okay, so the other issue that I see is that, can you go to the zoning map? So you've got industrial, I1, C1, I2, and I don't know what the city zoning is.
It's commercial.
So the problem is that almost looks like a spot zone.
I'm with you, Dr. Zerniak, Chair Costa, I am. But our goal right now is the effort, if you will, is there's about 20 parcels here. And just about all those parcels have already a residence on them or something residential. They cannot enjoy the liberty of an addition to their home if necessary. We cannot make the approval. And all this is doing is, obviously, I don't know how else to put it. This is correcting an error, mistake, a goof up that occurred years ago. You know what I mean? And so all we're doing is trying to make it easy on these people in the event they want to come in for an expansion.
Okay.
Luis, just one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I was reluctant to even ask, but did any of these residents who chose to stay in commercial zoning give you any kind of reasoning why?
No, well, it's been a while since I talked to, I think, Mr. Bush. They have their own, that's they just want to remain commercial for whatever reasons. And we're going to respect that. That's what we're doing. We're just going to, they want to stay commercial, it's on them.
There's
I personally, excuse me, would like to, just, so we don't have this kind of scenario, I would, I think it'd be good to see residential. There, even residential along the Baton Memorial, cross on the south side of the interstate, there's apartments right up to Baton Memorial. So it's not totally inappropriate to zone them residential. And this is just creating it is what it is. The proposal's coming out the way it is based on their input.
So I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
So every one of those property owners that's in pink has been notified, and they understand the implications of staying commercial while they have residential on there.
Yes, sir. They've been notified, 2-3 times? At least, for sure for this meeting. And then prior to when I first sent out the letters of, hey, we've caught something. And this is the implications that we see right now to your property. And this is, this is the way we believe that there's a way to correct this. What do you say? So they've gotten the word. I believe they've gotten the word.
Okay.
Luis, how did you notify all those people in that yellow zone?
Chief, chairperson, Chief, started back in April 8th. We did send out a notification to the project area residents. It wasn't given a case yet. We hadn't gone there yet. We were doing there at that very first notification. It was a probe, if you will, to see how they were going to react to what we were thinking. And then between April and July, I did start to get some phone calls. So, and then back in September, we sent a meeting again to everybody within in your estate analysis. We sent out letters to those what I call affected property owners at the those first 2 meetings, the community meetings, just to make sure we're focusing on them. And then for this meeting, we sent out to the affected property owners and the surrounding notification buffer.
Okay. Commissioner Thurston,
Yes?
I hear your wheels turning over there. Do you remember a case on the mechanic shop in that area? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
We have a similar situation here,
I agree.
What's your pleasure on this?
What's my pleasure?
Well, we had a serious
I
discussion
would
over
like to
that.
hear from the applicants, or not the applicants, but the residents there, to hear their side of the county's, what do you call it? Proposal. So I've heard the county side, but I haven't heard the residents' side.
All right. Okay. Any further questions of staff, commissioners? Nothing at all. Okay. Thank you, Luis. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the rule for discussion, and I'm going to set it to a 3-minute rule. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the gallery on the left side. And if you'd like to come and speak, you're allowed 3 minutes. You can take your mask off. We're going to swear you in. State your name for the record and raise your right hand, and we'll do that. So we'll start with the gentleman right in front of me. Step forward. We need to swear you in, okay?
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Raise your right hand. We're going to swear you in.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Charles Botchin. Address, 5706 Hanger Lake Road.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you.
First of all, that picture up there is a few years old, but it's substantially correct. Let me give you a very, very brief background. My family has lived on those properties since 1964. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood, and, frankly, it's remained pretty much static since 1964. I have previously practiced over in law practice over in Houston in residential and commercial real estate for about 40 years prior to my retirement. And although I don't claim to be an expert in everything, I have an inkling of what constitutes good property and bad property. And as much as I hate to say it, that whole area in there is crappy residential area. Nobody in their right mind would want to build new residences in that area unless, like me, they plan to have something that they're going to die in. And that's just the sad truth. That property is right next to the freeway or Highway 70. The noise pollution is horrible. To the east, you have a scrapyard that, in addition to being a scrapyard, makes a bunch of noise also. That stuff, it's all mostly what you might consider in low-income housing. As a planning commission, I would think it would be more desirable for the county to encourage development of that area if, as, and when it is suitable for development as commercial property. It's going to be a long ways off. I don't know if I'll live to see it, but it will be coming out there eventually. And certainly the property along Patan Memorial and even the short way into the Hanger Lake Road is if, as, and when it becomes commercially viable, it's going to be the prime property, And I noticed driving in here to town, there is not a single residential neighborhood within a quarter mile of the highway. You just don't build houses right next to the highway. And so as much as I appreciate the effort that they've looked into this, frankly, this kind of looks like a solution that's looking for a problem. Nobody asked for it. Everybody that I talked to has been opposed against it, or unfortunately, I don't agree with them, but they shrug their shoulders and they say, well, they're going to do what they want to do. That's not right. We don't need this change, period. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
you got a question?
Hold on.
Where is your residence? On the,
On the map.
Where's my residence?
yeah.
The mouse here. It's right there, and actually, like I say, this map is several years old. It does not depict my residence on the map. That's about 5 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Question there. So it lasts 5 years, you then obtained a building permit to put a residence
Well,
or to build a house
there was
on that property?
previously a mobile home located on there. I relocated a new mobile home on there.
So you took the existing one off and put a new one in?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, that picture taken right there happens to be during that brief time period when one was gone
One
before
was
the
gone.
other was put in there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you. Any further
Thank you,
questions?
gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, sir. The person in the blue shirt, would you like to step forward? Okay, I'm sorry, you're a guest speaker? Nothing? All right. You're next. Thank you. Please state your name for the record, and we're going to swear you in.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tracy Turner.
I,
Luis or Janine?
Please state your address for the record.
my address is 5680 Hanger Lake Road. I'm the most immediate property right off of
Okay,
Baton Memorial.
all right, thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And get closer to the microphone because we can't hear very well.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how far I want to go back with this, but the person that initiated the request was a family member who needed to put one of her family members someplace while she was working some things out with her family, and that's when I offered my lot just to put her kid there for a while. Anyway, she worked things out, didn't need it, and that's kind of what got this whole ball rolling, I believe. Since then, she no longer needed that change. I wasn't looking to do anything with it in the first place, and I'm just going to underscore what he said about it not being really suitable for residential use, even though we're all residents out there. It's terribly noisy with the industrial recycling center back there, and then the neighbor that's north of Ivory Wing Road that has a trucking company and is constantly moving big rocks and boulders. It's pretty deafening at a lot of time. All of these, the 12, 14, and 15 that are mine, it seems, unless all of it's being changed, it just seems like another patchwork of problems that there would only be a partial residential change. I understand that there are some benefits that come with that. I understand that the friendly part of it means that it's at no cost for this zoning change to happen, and where it becomes unfriendly in the future, if anybody wants to make any changes, it will be at a cost to them. I was just wondering if this has any bearing on the development that is happening west of Hanger Lake Road, but it had been brought to my attention that that's not county and that's city, and that this might not be the appropriate place to discuss that. So I am respectfully requesting that the zoning change not take place, and I would currently like to maintain my current zoning.
So that's, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, yes, go ahead.
So that's different from what's on the map, because Luis, can you pull up?
Where are we going?
Not that one, the new zoning map. So your property is right at the corner of Hanger Lake and Bataan Memorial.
Yes, right here.
So you're requesting that it stay commercial?
Yes.
Thank you.
Question, do you own all 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels?
3. I
Three
don't
of the
own,
4?
I do not own the northeast corner.
Just west of White?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions?
Not of Tracy, is that not of Tracy, but I do have one for staff again. Luis,
Yes, sir.
can you tell me, is this all septic tank?
Yes, sir.
No sewer?
No, sir.
The
No
parcels?
gas. No gas either.
Water and water and power?
Water's there. Yes, sir. No sewer, no gas.
What's the typical size of those parcels? So for example, the one that she just pointed out there, is that a third of an acre? Is that
I think she's got 3 properties there, obviously.
Yes, this one right here, I believe is a half acre, quarter acre, full acre.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hustis? Again, let me remind you, we only allow 3 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, yes, I do.
Do you swear or affirm?
Thank you. I know the drill.
Welcome back.
Well, good morning, paisanos. Appreciate it, the opportunity to talk to you. As my usual opening remarks, I don't really have a dog in the fight. Personally, I couldn't care less how you vote. My concern is for you guys and what you're doing and what you've been doing and what you should be doing in the future. We spent the whole morning, as we spent the whole morning a couple of weeks ago, talking about the present and the past. Zoning is about the future. Zoning is based upon a comprehensive plan that peers into the future for a minimum of 20 years. Since, according to the evidence presented here this morning, the evidence is that the governing bodies of the city of Las Cruces and Doña Ana County have said for the last 30 years that this whole area is going to be developed for commercial purposes. They put the road in, the expansion of the road from on 70, the massive improvements have been put in the last 10 years. A frontage road is put in on each side. All of those things are consistent with a long-range plan for commercial development along the corridor of US 70. Everything that you see on this map points to that as being the intent of the governing bodies involved to have this area developed commercially. You are being asked to drive a stake through the heart of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is very clear as to where and how growth and development will occur. And if you look at it closely, it's pretty close to zoned that way, especially in this particular area. You cannot, or you should not, take it upon yourselves to lightly rezone a party and change, in essence, the purpose of the comprehensive plan for this particular area. And you are doing this throughout the county, by the way. Many, many things that you have done are doing precisely this. You're violating the comprehensive plan, sector development, the long-range planning. So I caution you to consider very, very carefully what you are doing with regarding to zoning. This simply being an example of the problems with which you are confronted in attacking zoning requests and zone change requests. This issue is currently in litigation. We're going to find out from Judge Martin probably over the next 12 months how this works in Doña Ana County. And what you have been doing, in the opinion of this speaker, is highly destructive of the comprehensive plan as put out. And also the comprehensive plan is entirely consistent with the so-called Miller criterion. It sees progressive development over a long period of time and not ad hoc zoning or what's commonly called spot zoning, making ad hoc decisions for whatever your reasons may be. But that is not the way that zoning is supposed to work in terms of long-range land use policies and procedures. So I just caution you, as my letter says, to be extremely careful in what you're doing in this particular case with a view to the purpose of zoning, which is to provide a sense of stability over a long period of time to property owners throughout the community zone, not just the 300 feet road, but the community, to produce the health and welfare and safety of the community. The community is not the 300-foot radius. The community is Doña Ana County, or can be construed to be Doña Ana County, or even, and more logically, a larger sector of Doña Ana County. So be careful, paisanos. That's all I have. I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Hustis? No questions? Thank you so much for attending. Thank you.
Okay, good luck, paisanos. Thank you, Luis, for your presentation and all of your time that you've spent on it in front of this dais. And thank you, and good luck to you in the future.
Thank you. The lady, second to the last on the last row? No? The gentleman in the very back? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to close it to the gallery. Commissioners, your thoughts? Any discussion?
Yeah. Can I ask staff to help me understand, after hearing Mr. Eustace's statement, what is the zoning in the dark called incorporated? Is that?
This city limits, yes, sir.
Yeah, but is that C1 in the
Oh,
city?
it was commercials. I just know it was low intensity commercial. To the north, to the west.
All three of those? On the west and then across the street? That's all commercial?
This gray area, if you will, that's city limits, and this is state property right here. I know that this is private property, and this is zoned commercial. And then, obviously, there's residents here, so I'm assuming there's zoned residential. Down here in this area,
That's state land and
that's state land, that's
unzoned?
correct, yes, sir.
Is that unzoned then? Do you-
We don't zone state lands, if you will.
Okay,
We don't have any jurisdiction there.
okay.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions of staff? Nothing? All right. Thank you, Lise. The chair entertains a motion, or would you like to discuss it further? We had two people that were apparently opposed to zone change. Am I correct? So if you want, any commission want to entertain a motion?
Well, as a standard procedure for the commission, I'll make a motion to approve case number Z21-011, understanding that doesn't state my position on this.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion, Commissioners? And we need further explanation. Commissioner Zerniak can certainly help us with that.
Well, thank you, Chairman Acosta. I have a problem with this. I think it's inevitable that when you do zoning, and this was originally done, I guess, under the ETZ. I don't know what it was under the county, it was performance district. But when the ETZ was implemented, when you do a massive rezoning like that, it's inevitable that you're going to create non-conforming uses. And in this case, I don't think a mistake was made. I believe that what happened here was that the comprehensive plan was done, we looked at the parcels, and we said that this is going to be commercial. This is prime property for commercial, not residential. The fact that there was residential there made it non-conforming, and it was inappropriate for the future of the county. I mean, the fact that the city is right across the street indicates that sewer's coming, right? When that happens, this becomes prime commercial property, just like everything along 70. I also think that changing this would be a spot zone, that putting residential zoning in the middle of industrial and commercial land use is clearly a spot zone. It's inappropriate.
I think that you're absolutely correct. It just shows that the mapping on there during the ETZ era, they had a vision at that time, and so it is what it is. So we have a motion on the floor. Does anybody second the motion? Did anybody second?
Build it.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion.
Seconded it.
You second the motion?
Seconded it, yes.
All right, okay. Roll call, please.
No.
Commissioner Zarjas?
No.
Commissioner Zerniak?
No.
Commissioner Montañez?
No.
Commissioner Lear?
No.
Commissioner Herrera?
No.
Chair Acosta?
No. All right. I hope our staff understands our reasoning behind that, even though the comp plan does not show what it should have been. Okay, thank you so much. All right. Want to take a 2 or 3 minute break before we proceed, or do you want to just go ahead and go through the motion?
Let's proceed.
What's that? Proceed? Okay.
Let's proceed.
Item number 6, administrative approvals, November permits. Janine?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The map before you shows the building permit activity for the month of November, and we issued 14 brand-new single-family residentials that are dispersed throughout the county. And in addition to that, which is not mapped, there were 28 permits issued for residential additions.
Say
And
that
what
again.
is mapped are 28
I
additions.
didn't hear that. Those
14 brand-new single-family,
Yes.
28 additions to
28,
residential.
okay.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
then 2 brand-new commercial, which are depicted there in blue. And those are duplexes located in the Doniana Village area. We also issued, which are not mapped, 20 mobile home installation permits on private land and 4 mobile home permits in parks for a total of 24 mobile home permits. And we brought in approximately $48,000 in fees.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Janine. Item number 7.
Dave just stepped out.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I saw him.
Did you want to take a
You want to
5-minute?
take a little 5-minute break, and then we'll resume with item number 7? We'll recess for about 5 minutes.
That's kind of what we're working on now, so trying to get them to,
So that means an ongoing budget for them, doesn't it?
yeah,
That's just the PNC one, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's ongoing, that's what we're doing this session, is to request a maintenance fund. Yeah, it's good, it's gonna be good for New Mexico.
Let's move it forward.
Hey, do you want to read the bio or do you want Janine to read the bio?
I'll read it. Okay?
He's gonna read it. Okay, we're back in session again. Thank you, everybody, for that 5-minute break. Dr. Zerniak is going to introduce our guest speaker. Very well-renowned individual. And I thank you so much that you helped us with this because we've been trying to do this for a long time. Dr. Zerniak and I have been, we attended a lot of your webinars. Thank you for that. And it's going to impact not only Southern Doña Ana County, but the whole state as a whole. And again, I thank you so much for attending. Dr. Zerniak, would you please introduce our guest speaker?
Yep, it's my pleasure to introduce a friend and a colleague, Dr. Dave Dubois. Dr. Dubois is the state climatologist for New Mexico and director of the New Mexico Climate Center, and he's also an associate college professor at Nmsu. He provides climate and climate change information and education to policymakers, the agricultural community, industry, educators, students, and the public. In addition, he also gives numerous talks and holds workshops every year on topics covering climate, drought, air quality, and climate change. Dr. Dubois teaches and trains students at NMSU and maintains an active research program in air quality and climate. He earned a BA in physics from Rutgers University, an MS in physics from New Mexico State University, and a PhD in atmospheric science from the University of Nevada, Reno. Dave is a native New Mexican, but grew up on a farm in southern New Jersey,
Thank you.
growing vegetables, I presume.
Before you begin, I'd like to see if a representative from Elephant Butte Irrigation District is online. If so, please let us know. And if and jump in if you're online. Thank you so much, Dr. Du Bois.
Yes, this is James Narvaez from Elephant Butte Irrigation District, the Water Master. I'm here to just listen to the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much for attending.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I take the mask
Yeah,
off?
oh, yes, please.
I've already been vaccinated.
We've been
and I-
waiting for you for a long time. Let me tell you, this is going to be really interesting. Yeah, thank you so much.
I've been vaccinated, and I've also already had COVID already, so that's done. So thank you for the introduction, and I'm going to talk about climate change, and I'm going to make it local. And I'm going to talk a bit about the Interstate Stream Commission report that I was a part of, and we'll kind of blend it in, kind of what we're looking at for Doña Ana County. So I always start with a look way back, and this was actually a really great data set that's relevant to us here in Las Cruces and Doña Ana County. It was a tree ring reconstruction data set. And all that wiggly lines there, all this, this mouse here, well, anyway, those are basically summer precipitation reconstruction for the last 349 years, going all the way back to right around 675 or so, 1675. And so I put arrows on the bottom. The red, those are our really dry drought years. And the trees are actually from on the east side of the Organ Mountains. So if you go on the east side of the mountains, there's some pines up there. So if you ever go hiking, there's some really nice pines on the east side of the Organ Mountains. And my colleague, Connie Woodhouse, did this study and published it in 2013. And basically what they do is they drill cores in the trees, and then they look at the rings over time, and then they correlate it with the actual precipitation, and then they go back in time. And then, so that's what this data set is. And then the green are the periods of time when we had lots of rain. As you can see, they're spaced out. And there's some, if you look back in the 1950s over here on the right side of that graph, you can see our 50s drought. And you can see other droughts. And some of the droughts have been even drier than the 50s drought, but maybe not as long in duration. So I just wanted to show this to kind of give you guys a perspective on what has been going on here for 300 plus years. You know, we're going in on drought right now, and we've been in a drought since right around 1999. And if you're familiar with Elephant Butte, if you've been there like in the 80s, in the middle 80s, early 90s, I've been there when it was full. And I've got pictures when I was a kid, you know, with the marina was right up to the to the top, and there was water flowing out. And if you know, obviously, if you go there now, you can tell what it looks like and the impacts of drought. I just wanted to show real quick, this is the kind of the climatology of Las Cruces. And, you know, we've got data here in the Doña Ana County that goes back to 1895, if you didn't know that. It's moved around over by the Las Cruces Nmsu campus, but it's right around there. We've been collecting data. And these are some of the statistics from that period of record. Our coldest is minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The hottest ever in Las Cruces, we've 110. Back in 1994. The most rain we had in one day was 6.49 inches back in 1935. And we've had some close ones, but 3-inch plus has been the closest we've had since that 1935 one. So just imagine what that would have been if that were to happen again. Wettest year was 1941, as well as our wettest summer, the June, July, August. That's JAS. That was also, so we had 12 inches. We've got a wet summer. In some, you know, we've had a bunch of dry summers. You know, this last summer was not bad. And we're hoping for a reprieve for next summer. We don't know yet, but we're always hopeful as climatologists and people living here. Snowiest year was 1931, 14 inches of snow on the ground that year. And that graph on the right is our monthly average precipitation here in Las Cruces. And you can see the bars that are longest, that's our summer monsoon. So July, August, September, and just a bit in October, we get tropical systems. Our driest is March and April. Just kind of seeing, this is past, this is what we're seeing. This is looking at data since 1970. For the state of New Mexico, there's a trend of warming all over. And so these numbers that are in the map, those are their trend per decade. So for the southwest corner of New Mexico, we're seeing a trend of 0.6 degree Fahrenheit increase per decade. And that's just the summer. And if you can do the same thing for winter and spring, and I just plotted the summer. So that's our summer temperatures, average temperatures are climbing up, and even more in the southeast. So if you see that 0.08 degrees Fahrenheit increase, increasing in a little more than the southwest deserts. Another thing we've been looking at is tracking the growing season. That's the number of days between freezing times. So it's the number of days between freezes over the last 128 years. You can see it over from when we installed the weather station back around 1895 all the way to about 1960s. It's been about the same. Yeah, there's a year-to-year bounce back and forth. There's some years less, some years more. But ever since right around 1970, we're seeing this uptick going up, 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 up. So that's that climbing trend. So it's pretty remarkable. You can see some of the years all the way up on the very end of the graph that are like more than 280 days that's our growing season. So usually it's around 200, somewhere around there. So that's an 80-day increase compared to average this last few years. So that's kind of remarkable, and there's a lot of things that are contributing to that, not only the global signal, but also the growth in Las Cruces has helped out a bit in that as well. So there's a lot more parking lots, houses, streets than there used to be. But there's also, we're seeing that same trend in places that are also rural in nature as well. I just want to kind of talk a bit about the Interstate Stream Commission project. Basically, we did this with a bunch of colleagues of mine from New Mexico Tech, UNM, and Nmsu, as well as some water managers. We put together a document. It's a 200-page document on the current state of knowledge on how climate change is impacting water resources in New Mexico. And then with the goal of helping basically motivate and form a basis, a foundation for knowledge to plan out the next 50 years in water. And so we had a bunch of topics. The bullets there on the bottom there, those are the different chapters. There was a basic climate projections. That's the chapter I co-wrote with David Gutzler from UNM. Then we talked about the surface water budget. That's the water coming down the Rio Grande from Colorado, and how that's, what are the losses, gains, with climate, and then also talking about the ecological dynamics. So what is actually that water is impacting across the state. And then other areas that are important are the fires, wildfires, erosion, water and wind erosion, and then landscape change with that in mind of a changing landscape, changing water resources. And then we also talked about what are some of the prospects for extreme precipitation, both droughts and flooding, how our soils are going to change over time with the changing climate, and then also going down into the water supply and quality. So basically, we're not making any solutions, but we want to just know what is the current state of knowledge. So basically summarizing all the different papers and research that's been done and all the agency reports, and not only New Mexico, but regional and national and global, and put them all together, and then what is it saying? So So this is one of our graphs that we put into the report. This is statewide. So it's showing the gray line over on that graph, that's past. That's already in the books. So that's their temperature. As you can see that changing trend upwards in the 70s kind of. And then the red line is the projection. So we summarized a 20 model ensemble of climate outlooks for New Mexico. And that's kind of what the summary is showing, that increase over time. And in our outlook, our horizon was going out to 2070, 2050 to 2070 was our outlook. Although the models do go out to the end of the century in 2100. But basically the bottom line is we're going to see a 5-degree increase in the average temperature by mid-century. That's about 2050. And that's our outlook, and that's probably our most, that's probably the biggest thing is the temperature projection, and it has the most certainty of all the things that we're talking about here, is that climbing temperature. And the different colors are the range of both natural variability and also the model variability. So, and that's at the higher emissions scenario. So we hope that we don't get to that point, that much. The RCP 8.5, that's the higher emissions. We don't know yet because we don't know the future, but we can plan for that kind of future if this everything goes the way the things are going right now. So that's kind of our horizon. So what does that mean? So we did this, remember this was a statewide project. So we looked at the left is our current, that's our average from 1971 to 2000. That's what the temperatures are right now. And then on the right is the change. If we go out to 2069, 2040 to 69, that's our average. And you can see there's the legend on the upper right. That's the scale of what the colors mean. It goes from about 5 to about 7. So you can see the four corners are warming up faster, a little more than most of the southeast quarter or third of the state. So about 5. That's at 5-degree average change by mid-century. And so we can also kind of drill down into specific points as well. So I just picked this off from, you just put a dot on New Mexico and say, tell me what it looks like for Las Cruces. And so that graph on the right just kind of shows you the model variability of the 20 different models that we looked at. And then on the left, it kind of shows you that table there shows for Las Cruces, the historical annual average mean temperatures of about 63 degrees. If we go out to 2010 to 39, it's around 65. Mid-century, which is that's the 2040 to 69, it's about 68, 67.7. And then, of course, end of century, far in the future, but it's 71 degrees. And just like, what does that mean? So I just picked some average temperatures in the region. So Chandler, Arizona, which is in the Phoenix area, it has an average annual temperature of 71. So that's that's kind of what we're heading, is we're going to be like Phoenix by the end of the century. If we're planning out the current scenarios, in El Paso is like 65, 64.6. So that's like an early century over the next 30 years. And by 2039, we're going to be like El Paso. So it's that slowly inching, but we're heading toward a much warmer state, comparing like Phoenix. So that is very concerning. It should be concerning to all of us, and that our climate is changing, and we don't know the future, but that's our possibility, and it's highly likely that we're heading in that direction. That's from our modeling. So that was temperature. So what about precipitation? So this is the same models that we use for the statewide. It's 20 model ensemble. There's not a clear trend. So remember, the gray is past, and the blue is the projected precipitation, annual average precipitation average for New Mexico, the whole state. So not a lot in the total annual, but if we look at the seasons, there's actually some changes that we're seeing in the seasons, and that's this next graph. So there's a lot of text on the left, but I'll summarize it. So on the right, so we see the 4 maps. Those are the 4 seasons. So we start with A, which is the upper left. That's winter. So, and that's the difference between the past. So we're seeing if it's a gray, it's sort of in the middle, but if it's like a dark gray, that's increasing precipitation. And then if it's brown, the darker browns are drying. So all goes from dark brown is dry, and the darkest kind of grayish is the getting wetter. So you can see our area in southern New Mexico Southwest, for winter, we're expecting some drying out of our climate. So it's creating a more arid system. And this is out to mid-century. Spring is another, so that's our second one, it's drying out of springs. In summer, there's actually the models that we chose showed maybe just an uptick in increase in precipitation for the monsoon, as well as maybe some in the fall as well. So there's a lot of concerns about having dry winters in our area, as well as a drier spring, because it's already dry in spring, and we do have this kind of that. We would like to have some rains to keep the soil moisture, especially in the winter. Is basically we don't have anything growing, but we need that moisture for the ground, for the vegetation, the ecosystems. It soaks in, and then it's ready for use when we get the warmer temperatures that growing season. So there's a concern of us not only climatologists but the ecologists, that we're concerned about these kind of signatures, even though our precipitation looks flat, but the seasonals makes a big difference. And so we actually summarized the work that's being done nationally with extreme precipitation. And we're not seeing a big change right now, but the models that we're showing, this is the National Climate Assessment for the whole country. And it's actually showing they're predicting an uptick in the extreme precipitation. So remember that keeping the precipitation the same, but maybe having it come down in big dumps, and then dry, and then big dumps, and then that average is the same, but there's the more extreme values. So, like I said, we haven't really seen this yet, but it's in the future. So we need to plan for these kind of things. When flood control, things like that, implications are, getting big dumps of rain is not good. We like to have them little at a time, but this is kind of what we're seeing in the future. And then also, that going back to that spring and winter drying, there's a concern with looking at the drying of the soil column. Basically, the soils are drying out, and this is the projections out with the same models for the National Climate Assessment, saying declines in soil moisture are expected, especially in the winter and spring. A lot of issues with wind erosion. We've seen here, we're in the arid Southwest. Dust is a way of life, but we don't want it to increase. There's a lot of issues with the health community with that, as well as other diseases that can extend longer with drier soils, and there's problems there. So I think that's another issue that we need to be concerned about for us. The other part is the association of the high temperatures and the drying out. There's a concept called evapotranspiration. So we need to get evaporation from soils, but the plants themselves, they also release water, just like our house plants. We got to keep watering them, because otherwise they'll get brown. So same issue. That's why you have to keep watering your plants, because they lose water as well. And you think about it, over all the rangelands and naturals out there in the boonies, there's plants, trees, mesquite, things like that out there, grasses. They'll need with the increasing temperature, that potential evapotranspiration, that's the amount of loss of water vapor from the plants. That's going to increase the thirst of the atmosphere is going to increase, and you can see that's all red. So there's a change of more water is going to be needed to supply natural systems, as well as our human-made systems like grasses and ornamentals, everything. Having to water more because of there's more thirst in the atmosphere, and so there's going to be needing more water. That's the bottom line. And I'll just talk about drought for a moment. Like I said earlier, we're in drought since 1999. This is, you can see the ebbs and flows of drought over the last 20 years. The darker the red, the worse the drought. And this is for the whole county. As you can see over in the far right of the graph, 21, you can see that's been a pretty dry and intense drought that's comparable to the 2011 drought and also the 2004 drought. So those are when we had double La Ninas. That's what we're in now. We're in a second La Nina. Those usually mean dry and warmer winter times. So that's kind of where we're in. We expect to see that line continue on going into 22. So, which kind of implications, seeing more of these kind of events when it's warmer and the soils are dry, when we're droughts, we don't want to see, and this is basically a combination of thunderstorms, high winds, disturbed soils, not having cover and a crust on the soil. We're likely going to see more of these. We see these several times a year. I'm out there taking measurements of these. I keep track of these over time in Las Cruces and other places as well. Just kind of some bullet summaries for future droughts, with the increasing temperatures, is forcing future droughts to be more severe than the past. So if you compare, if you remember, if you're around in the 1950s, we know what happened then. We've seen the droughts, at least in the last 20 years, and we know what those are. We can see those were those droughts that the last 20 years are naturally caused. But we're pushing them a little more severe than they would have already have occurred. And so things like evaporation's more. We've talked to some of the civil engineers and talking about like the Elephant Butte, the evaporation of the water, just there's some numbers there to look at, for increases the rate of 8 inches of loss for every 1 degree increase in annual average, I misspelled annual, annual average daily maximum temperature. So it's that loss of water, more loss projected. And another big thing that we'll talk a little bit about, and is the snowpack. Seeing where, there may be some really wet years in there, but it's an average decline in the snowpack going out to 2070. And we just had a workshop last week on the dust and snow issue. Big deal in the San Juan Mountains, as well as the Sangre de Cristos going up in Colorado. More wind erosion pushes that dust up to the Colorado, and they've been measuring it. They've been actually taking snow cores and looking at the dust, and that actually melts the snow faster. So it's what they call a feedback mechanism. More higher temperatures, more drought, more dust, faster the snow melt decreases over time. And the bottom line, the last winter, surface water supplies are projected to decrease over the next half of the century as a result of that. And it's a lot of graphs here, but I just want to summarize the text on the left there. We summarized some papers, and I just wanted to quote one of them from 2019. Is showing the declines in the snow melt runoff and snowpack, and those graphs are model based as well as the observations, and we're seeing a lot of variability, but we're seeing a decline in the snowpack as well as the stream flow going into the river. So it basically has an implication. Bottom line is less water going into Elephant Butte, so less water, surface water. Meaning we're going to rely again, at least the outlook 2050, more reliance on groundwater, much more than we are now. So that's kind of we've talked to Phil King, who's works with the Elephant Butte Irrigation District, and he was part of this, and we've reviewed it together, and we're all in agreement of, yep, that's the direction we're heading. And I just wanted to show just a graphic, just kind of a look back in time. This is 2018 on Elephant Butte, just to show what it looks like. I always like to have pictures and maps and graphs to kind of say, yeah, we can show all these things, but going out to the Elephant Butte and looking at it for yourself, looking at where the water was back in the late 90s, and then looking at it what is now. And this is a satellite view to look at. It goes from 22% to 4% of capacity in 1 year. And that's kind of the ebb and flow. There's going to be snowpack, in the future. We're always going to have snowpack. but it's going to be less over time. Is that water reaching the areas where we can reach it is going to be, we're going to be down to that 4% single-digit capacity every year. And, it's that, how do we manage with our systems, our agricultural systems? And I don't have answers to that, but it's more of, this is a reminder. This is what we're seeing. We see these on really intense drought years. It's much more likely to see these more often, that kind of signal. So it's like a harbinger of what's to come, these kind of events. Almost done. Just kind of some summary of the report and some of the bottom line, what's going to happen to New Mexico. That's we put in that Interstate Stream Commission report. Less stream flow and less recharge in our groundwater and surface water connection because of an increased aridity. We know that aridity is that warming temperature, more loss to the atmosphere. We still get the same precipitation, but it's that release to the atmosphere. The atmosphere is more thirsty. A lot more variability in the precipitation we expect. And then our droughts are going to be flavored toward more hotter, more severe drought. And then our snowpack, we're seeing a overall trend decline in the amount of snow in our upper reaches, our headwaters, both in the Pecos, the Rio Grande, Cimarron, Colorado as well. And New Mexico is part of the Colorado basin as well. We get water goes to Albuquerque. More demands on groundwater is kind of the outlook, and increasing stress on vegetation, likely more catastrophic fires. And this is not just New Mexico, this is the Western US. And, we've seen the impacts of that this last summer with the smoke. There's been smoke in the air pretty much the whole summer, and there's issues with air quality. Health is something that we need to, really pay attention to. Not every year is going to be bad like that, but it's more of the trend, the frequency of these occurring more as well as more intense. And also there was a chapter on looking at increased flooding, sediment transport. Remember that possibility of looking over time, more intense events. So, how do we plan for that, with sediment transport, flood control? And then the last thing was we were looking at ecosystem impacts, the damage to soils through the loss of vegetation and erosion. We've seen the impacts of that during wildfires, that debris flow that comes down, as well as the loss, that evapotranspiration puts more stress on. So even though they may get some good rain to get the germination, they're going to be slower in coming up. And so that's kind of the direction that we're doing. We've had folks at the National Park Service actually part of the report, and they were experts at looking at the long-term impacts of pinyon juniper and some of the higher elevations. And it's that soil pest as well, having more stress on the trees when the drought is out there. So I know I sound kind of negative on it, but there's, this is kind of this is the summary of what's out there and what a lot of the vegetation managers, Park Service, BLM are looking at, as well as Forest Service. So I think this is our opportunity to learn and to plan. And this is a slow tick upwards. So we have time, but we need to act on these. How do these things impact our decision making? And that's kind of the charge to all of us. Whether you're planning commission or citizens, we have this as our outlook. So I'll end with that. There's my contact. If you have further any questions later on after this meeting, feel free to call me, email me. I'm also on social media, so there's lots of things I'm easy to find, at bottom line, and I'm here in Las Cruces, so just call me in whenever you need to. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question. First, I guess, just for me personally, would it be possible for you to send us email these slides?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
I've already given them to Janine already. Or no, maybe, you already have them, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Secondly, the note I was looking at here, having been involved in the planning for the UDC and the comprehensive plan and all that, I don't know how much we took climate change. It wasn't that big an issue 5 or 6 years ago when we were doing it. It may have been for you, but it wasn't for us, it appeared. And I'm just wondering about revisiting and reviewing some of the goals we had, based on the previous case that we did about the development and the grandfathering in under the ETZ. I'm wondering what needs to be addressed. As I recall, we had some pretty aggressive development goals, and with the results of what's happening with climate change in these studies, I'm wondering what needs to be revisited, especially in our longer-term planning.
Yeah. Yeah, I just stream of thought, kind of what I could think of. I mean, soils is a big deal, and having a plan to, not leave them out just as it's a resource. It's not just a thing that you have and not really pay attention to. Disturbance is a big deal for this, and as well as the need to have cover when it's needed, like in the springtime when we get dust storms. I've noticed many times, I live on the east side, not in the far east, but over by Roadrunner. I can look out of my window and I can see these dust storms coming in off of the Jornada. And then they pick up right as they reach 70, it really increases, in terms of the intensity of the haboobs. Those are the walls of dust. They come off and then they increase, and then it decreases as they go over by Dripping Springs. So you can see the impacts of some of the development. I'm not, pointing fingers, but it's like observations over areas where it's more disturbed.
Yeah.
And I think that's one idea is soil, paying more attention to soil. And I was part of an ad hoc committee for the city of Las Cruces on, we've take it or leave it, the ordinances, how they work, but, working with developers on keeping disturbance at a minimal, especially when there's a need, when the spring comes around. We've had cases of valley fever in Las Cruces. That's a health issue. It's not as big right now, but it's there. And it's one of those things that could become more if there's more development and less care for the soil. There's lots of planning that could be done. I know the flood commission is doing a great job in taking measurements. So I think that's a great thing, is to have a baseline of observations for warning for when things do pop up, is to maybe even increasing that in areas where there's no monitoring, so that we know where the problems are, looking in the future. Because, like I said, the studies are showing that there's likely increase in the extremes. We've seen a lot of problems this year in the south part of this county. La Union, we all know about those. So there's some issues, with that. I think that's starting, and we've talked with the city of Las Cruces about urban heat islands is another one, is looking at the people who don't have access to cooling. That's a big deal, and it goes into the rural areas as an issue because of that heat. We've approached 107, and the heat index was actually more. A heat index was like 110, 112. And we did a study with the city with a sensor on cars, mapped Las Cruces back in 2020, and there was definite areas where there was really hot, much hotter than the campus weather station. And that was a concern too, is keeping that on the people who are more sensitive to heat, being more mindful of them. And I don't know if that's a policy issue or, that's a social issue, dealing with our neighbors and our family members. So I'm sure there's many other things, but I don't want to come rambling on.
No, thank you.
I have a question. You talked about, I was kind of surprised to see the amount of water loss off a big body of water like Elephant Butte. You said 8 inches and a 1 degree increase. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with any of the research that's been done in arid areas where they've sprayed a film on top of the water to reduce that evaporation off the large bodies of water? I know they've been doing it, some in North Africa. Is that something that we've looked at, or is it a practical thing for something that big?
I'm familiar with, in California, they do evaporation mitigation on some of their small reservoirs. There's actually little plastic balls they put they float, and it shelters the water from evaporation. I think in a small areas like that, little ponds that are just a few acres, I think if you have money, those work. Apparently they work. But if you put a big reservoir like Elephant Butte or Caballo, boy, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, there's been some discussion, just kind of thought discussion about what about storing water more in the north? And that, of course, that requires a compact, change.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
where's less evaporation, I don't know. I mean, we got to think out of the box with this. We can't just do the same thing we've been doing and expect different answers. It's, and it's big areas, and it's, I don't know. That needs to be on the table in a lot of discussions.
Another question, sort of unrelated to this. My undergraduate work was in plant genetics, and I'm just wondering if the plant geneticists in the Southwest have been doing work on developing varieties that have reduced evapotranspiration rates without adversely affecting yields.
Yeah, that's a great question. I sit in ACES College, this ag college, and the two faculty that are right next to me, we have a cotton breeder and then an alfalfa breeder, and they're both looking at breeding for the genetics of those two crops, and how do we get crops that require less water, and it's also good crops, because how do we get people to use those varieties if it's even if it's less water, but if it doesn't taste as good, the quality.
I worked with farmers for a number of years. They're not exactly change agents.
Yeah. So I think there needs to be more, and then we need to relook at what we plant. I know it's a hard thing to do. It's culture, that's family, it's infrastructure. I grew up on a farm and we had planters and we were all set. But if you're gonna, recently we added tomatoes. It's a very expensive proposition to have tomato planters and pickers. And so it was an infrastructure, it was a risk. And so I think we're going to have to take risks, and we've got to work together on this. Maybe there's other people who can do the same, and think about what crops that require less water, and maybe even, we have to look at what's going on, like in the Colorado. They're already dealing with the shortage in the Lake Mead. They're having to do fallowing of lands because there's no water. If you're down in that part of Arizona, there's farmers there who say, okay, you're not getting water and you can't get water. So you pay them, but that's a big deal. And so how do we do it here? I don't know. We have to work together on it. Thanks.
Dave?
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
One question. With the legalization of cannabis in New Mexico, do you foresee any problems with the water situation, seeing as how cannabis is a water user, it's extreme. You need a lot of water to produce a lot of cannabis in there. And some people are even talking about mega farms in New Mexico for cannabis. What do you foresee that?
We got to look at the water usage of the crops. Pecans are great in terms of giving you lots of money. Requires a lot of water. Same with other crops. I'm not going to judge any of them, but we got to just put them all on the table and say, okay, how much water do we have? What's our trend in our platform going to be in the next 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Let's look short term, next year, and then kind of look at that. And I don't know. We're going to have to make some big choices. There's other places that are really good that have more water, and we've looked at this, on the research side. Higher elevation areas that are not as cold, but it's still, they get more rainfall. Areas that are, I don't know. And maybe even not even New Mexico may be the best place. I don't know. I'm not going to make that judgment, but we got to lay things out and objectively analyze them, even though, yeah, it's great to have more money, but if we're sacrificing the resource and making something not sustainable, that's a big concern. And it should concern everybody that, because we all live here and we have to have water, and, it's, I'll leave it at that.
Hopefully, we can just kind of stay ahead of the increased water use now that we're just at the beginning of we're all, this is all new to us, and we're going to start to see. So hopefully there's a way to monitor increased water use for marijuana farms especially. I just want to add that also marijuana users, that causes a lot of cottonmouth, which is going to increase water consumption with their users. So maybe that'll be taken into consideration. I yield to the commission.
How do you know that?
Dave, one more question for me, please. Do you see greenhouses as a way to conserve water in these upcoming crops, such as tomatoes or any vegetables or even cannabis?
As long as those are enclosed, so you have more control over things, and you can do things like vertical farming. I don't know a lot about it. I'm not a horticulturist. I'm a climatologist, but if we can do it with using it, it's acres, it's area. It's how do we manage, even though that we can build lots of greenhouses. I mean, is it profitable to have lots of greenhouses? Yeah. I mean, if we could be able to use a lot less water and high cash crops with that, I think that's good. We can have more, we can control the weather inside the greenhouses, but it's going to take a lot of area. And that's kind of what I've been reading it's the resource. It's like 50 acres of greenhouses. That's a lot. I don't know. We're going to have to, that's something we need to have experts in to talk about, and what are the possibilities.
Dave, do you know, are there any faculty at Nmsu working on desalination?
Yes, there are. Yeah, there's actually several folks who are actively working. There's a pilot, the plant in Alamogordo, and using the water for crop use, and looking at the long-term impacts of the soil chemistry. If you keep putting the same water from at different levels of desal or the refuse from that, there are folks, and I've listened to some of the student projects. Yeah, so there is active. That may be something to invite a future speaker in, is to have one of those, like Dr. Shukla. Manoj Shukla is he's a soil scientist, and he's been looking at the long-term impacts of water refuse, as well as the brackish water on soils. And that's what we're dealing with. We're pumping water out of the aquifer, which has a lot different chemistry than the water coming down the Rio. And what are the implications of that? I personally don't know. I would ask him.
Okay, thanks.
I have so many questions. We'd be here for days, okay? Several factors in agriculture. Has the Department of Agriculture here in the state had an interest and a buy-in? But before I ask that question, the representative for EBID, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you have any questions of Dr. Du Bois? We have never given you an opportunity to ask any questions. Do you have any questions?
No, sir. I sure don't. Just here to listen right now and, get a copy of that. And I also work closely with Dr. King, and I've never met the doctor, but I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, I have a question for you. What is the average rate of water rights for per acre foot here in Doña County? How much are they allowed to use?
Well, it fluctuates. Obviously, you've seen the graphs of the historical, the way the drought's been going with us. So that all depends on what the amount that's available for diversion. For instance, last year we had about 4 inches per acre, which we're water right at 90,640 acres. So we only had 4 inches of water. Previous year, we were at 11 inches, and then, it kind of fluctuates as the drought dictates. But during the wet years, we're at about 3 acre feet per acre, and those have been long gone since we've hit this drought. But it does fluctuate, just depends on the storage at the Elephant Butte, and then we kind of go from there.
So your opinion regarding say the 9 inches of water, acre feet, 9 inches per acre, right? Is that substantial to continue growing pecans?
If all you had to rely was on 9 inches of water, no, you could not grow. So that's why you see the trend of the use of groundwater, and that's why groundwater was, when they started drilling their wells back when we hit the first drought in the 50s. So, to sustain those kind of crops, you definitely need to have supplement water. Surface water is not going to be enough.
Okay. The question I have also of you is on other crops that might be available to farmers in the event that they don't have enough water to feed their trees, right? Have you ever spoken to anybody regarding water issues that may be coming up?
Yes, sir. It's spoken on every single board meeting. It's spoken on every single staff meeting that we have just within the district. It's very important to us looking at the climate change. EBID has done quite a bit of work on trying to work with what we do have. And it's in constant circulation in all our meetings, not just with the board members and the constituents themselves, but just within EBID and how we can better manage what we have. So yes, it's constant discussions on that.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Du Bois, I mean, you touched base on snowpack, degradation of soils because of lack of water, precipitation, water evaporation, so many things to talk about, water supply and the quality of water. Can you expound a little bit on any of those issues? Any more?
Pick one.
Pick one, okay. Well, I mean, I definitely encourage, if you're really interested, that there's a link on that page that has the ISC report. You could download the PDF. I think, let me get right there. There's in the white on the bottom right there. That's the link to the report, and it's written. We try to write it so that it's not like a journal article, but so we not try to avoid a lot of really technical terms that only engineers or climatologists know. So I encourage you to grab that and go through it. Pick one of those chapters and just kind of read through. They're only like 5 to 10 pages each. Some are a little more, but I think if I were to look at I'm not a soil scientist, but I have a lot of stake in it when dealing with air quality. And the NMDA has they've been bringing up programs to address the soil quality and soil health, and so I think that's a growing scientific topic, as well as it's warranted, it's needed. Like I said, I grew up on a farm, and we addressed it every year. We do no-till on our crops. Almost not all of them. It all depends on the needs of the different crops that we need, in terms of keeping pests down and rotations. And thanks for bringing that up. So there's a definite need. Like I mentioned before, is that wind erosion is a big deal for us, and as well as water erosion. So how do we plan communities, and runoff is we really need to focus a lot on that, in my opinion. And things are just going to get worse. You know, we may have some really good years, some really good rain, but it's that over time, we need to plan for those times when it's not, when we get the extreme precipitation. And we could, you know, we are capable of getting rainfall on the order of 6 inches in New Mexico here. And I was also part of a study, we're doing this maximum probable precipitation study, and that's with the Dam Safety Bureau. And we looked at a lot of places all across New Mexico, and we've had some really big floods. You know, like 1941 was the one of record, you know, with a really, really wet year. It was a combination of lots of tropical systems and El Nino, you know, those kind of best, you know, I guess worst case scenario, that can occur again on top of climate change's increasing of precipitation extremes. Those are very unlikely, you know, to occur very often, but it could occur. And so I think we plan for the worst case sometimes. We need to do that. And making sure that we have less disturbed soil is a big deal. So I think how do we do that depends on how we manage areas that are not being used, as well as the used areas. You know, like I mentioned before, the city has an ordinance on that. And so in New Mexico, Environment Department has the dust rules for areas, and Doña County is part of that. We have monitors out. There's one over on Holman Road. There's another one at the Environment Department office behind Sprouts, so that area in Las Cruces. And then there's West Mesa by the Roadrunner rest area. Those are 3 monitoring areas for dust. And so we do get those events in mainly spring. We track those, and I think we need to think about the implications, not just the events themselves, but health. Human health is a concern we need to really put on our table. You know, talking with the Department of Health, the border health people, we all breathe the same air here. So it's that we need to band together. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. The other one also is there's an influx of people. It appears that there's a lot of influx of people coming into the area, and we have issues with dust control that are mandated by the federal government. How else can we look at, or who else has information regarding how we can suppress dust control without using too much water?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, water evaporates very quickly. I mean, I used to work for the Environment Department, and one of the things that was on the books was applying water. But it's like, yeah, but it's like, it's a resource and it evaporates. You know, if you do a loop around some properties, by the time you go back into the loop, the water is already evaporated from there. And you just put out 100 gallons of water or 200 gallons. So I think there needs to be alternatives. You know, those are really good for short term right now. You know, you want to get it done right now. But, you know, thinking longer term, you know, when I was working on the ad hoc committee for the city, we were looking at, you know, planting native grasses. You know, but you have to use water, though. You have to get it to germinate, to come up in order to achieve some small plants to keep the soils kind of bound, as well as keeping things off it. And we're dealing with that in some of the areas in western part of New Mexico with DOT, with dust issues, with traffic accidents because of you can't see when you're driving. And it's all comes down to the amount of disturbance in right areas where it's needed. You know, maybe not everywhere needs to be the same, but in areas where it's very fragile, those are the areas we need to concentrate on. Where people live, where we've had accidents before, those are areas we need to focus on. I'm not asking to do the whole state. That would be way overboard. But areas where we need to focus on, where are those areas that we need to apply those? You know, putting native vegetation, keeping disturbance off those areas so that there's no off-road traffic or, you know, breaking the soil crust. And then we're all in the same boat, you know, with Arizona, they're doing the same thing. You know, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality as well as ADOT. They've had the same issues as New Mexico. So we can learn from each other. And there's groups that do that. And okay, what did you learn in I-5 in California, Central Valley? You can learn from that and maybe what works here in New Mexico that they already did, with Caltrans. There's some sharing of ideas. I think that's great. But it's being accepting those ideas and allowing them to listen to other people. We got to talk to other people in order to learn. So that's what I encourage.
And our dairy industry is it's very prevalent here in the southern portion of the county. The water usage there, what else would you recommend when they have holding ponds and things of this nature? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about that. So I don't know if I should comment on that. I mean, we have to just look at the bottom lines in terms of water usage and, I would have to dig a little more to really give you guys a useful opinion.
And, the representative for EVID touched the base on storage. When you see the map that you showed, that satellite map of the dam, I think if you have less storage, then you're allowed to pump more water. But is the dam actually a water source for replenishing the water aquifer here in Doña Ana County, or?
Yeah, I mean, when you have water down the Rio, it does benefit the shallow aquifers are right around that area. So if you dry it, the whole column gets dry again. And then as you go back up, it brings it up again. So that's the concern, is that, if we don't have that water every year that we release, during irrigation season, it's going to impact the ecosystems. And I think that's something that we've talked about before, and I think it's been talked about many times. I actually, even the last 10 years, I remember at a city council meeting in Las Cruces talking about that issue. It's like, yeah, we built a system, and we built an ecosystem around that man-made system. And then if we change it, there's going to be implications for the areas around the ecosystems and the bosque type of natural systems that have grown up. And we've modified it. It used to have a free running river, and that was a stable ecosystem. We had floods and droughts up and down. But since we changed it, having a irrigation, that's the way it is. So we have to understand that. So what is going to be sacrificed in the lands, natural lands, if we change this, if we don't have irrigation from the river, or very, very little. I would have to bring somebody in who's really ecosystem dynamics, who really can pick through that, what it would look like.
So Dave, you're talking about holding more water up north. Do they actually have excess capacity because Elephant Butte is so much bigger than any of the reservoirs up north? Would they actually have to build new reservoirs?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, and it's not just the policy issues. It's the capacities of and then we would have to totally change around the compact, because we have different uses for El Vado, Abiquiu, and Heron. Those all have different. They're all built and they have purposes. Yeah. and if you add them all up, it's still not going to be enough. I mean, all the way to Platoro in Colorado, it's still, So I don't know. I don't know the solution to this, and it's a bigger problem than us. And it's 2 states. I mean, 3 states actually, because Texas has a say in it.
So your one of the seasonal maps showed an increase of winter precip.
Yeah.
And I wonder how significant that was.
There it is.
I mean,
So
is
for
that a lot
the-
more snow or a little more precip?
Yeah, it's basically driven by the jet stream it's kind of similar to like in La Nina. The jet stream tracks further north than south. You know, when we get lots of snow, that means our jet stream veers more southerly. So that scenario of those 20 ensemble models is showing that the jet stream is moving further north. And that's why there's actually wetter as you go up to the Canadian border. It's actually going to get more wetter and drier as you go south, you know,
Yeah.
and even drier in Mexico than we are. And so there's some signal, right? And Colorado is sort of the dividing line. It's a slow gradient, you know, statewide, you know, Colorado, Wyoming. So Colorado is sort of that dividing line between it's dry to the south of Colorado and then wetter as you go north of Colorado. So that's what we're showing here. So it's not a lot of increase, but it's that dividing line, you know. It doesn't mean like we're going to get some years are going to get a lot of snow. Some, you know, an average is going to be more than we get, a little more than now in that 71 to 2,000 range.
But the general trend is less overall.
Yeah, well, I mean, the amount of total precip is about the same.
Okay.
It's just that the seasonal time when we get it is going to change. And that's the concern, is that winter and spring for our area, winter, spring are going to be less, and we're going to get big dumps in the summer, which has implications for that extreme precipitation notion. You know, it's like, okay, do our systems, are they built to address, you know, a 6-inch? I mean, you know, I'm not saying that it's going to occur, but it's like, you know, we've seen multiple 3 inches. You know, I also run COCORAS, which is a citizen science program. And since we've had lots of gauges all over, like Leesburg, we've had a gauge there, and they had a 3+ inch there, and we've had a 3+ inch on campus back in 2010. Those occur, and it does give you flooding. And then of course, we had the one down in Santa Teresa this past year, almost 6 inches, you know, 5 inches. So that's pretty close to what, you know, what if that occurred in an area where above Las Cruces, there was going to, you know, a big pulse of water coming down, you know, Radium Springs.
I mean, the one example of that is that back in the 40s, those high rainfalls wiped out the grape vines in the northern part of the state. And it's taken us 50 years to recover from that.
Yeah.
So it does have serious implications for agriculture.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And the other probability of a question, in the event that the state of Texas and the state of New Mexico don't come into some kind of an agreement regarding the use of water for both states, the impact area would be kind of detrimental. Not preaching doom and gloom, but I'm saying it would be very detrimental for the whole state. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because it's the things that are connected. You know, what happens here in Doña Ana County affects bigger areas. It's economics as well as the environment. So we got, you know, thinking of, you know, drought impacts a bigger area. Even if drought occurs as one area, like snow drought, you know, less snow, that impacts that area plus everything downstream. So it'll impact, you know, what we see, you know, thinking of the economics part of it. I think that's what I can see. I mean, I don't know nobody knows what the lawsuit's going to end up, you know, but I mean, just kind of looking at different scenarios, I mean, cost of water is probably, you know, that's probably going to change. It's likely.
Well, you know, you're looking at empirical data. I mean, that's what it is. That's science.
Yeah.
And if you could get in touch with Dr. King and ask him if he could come and visit with us, just like you did, and any other of your associates that you may have that would be of interest for planning and zoning for Doña Ana County. And I would invite the additional counties that if they want to tune in for the discussions, I would be more than glad to accommodate them in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, we have so many questions that I mean, you would be here for days. Any further questions of Dr. Du Bois? Well, anyway, thank you so much, and I do appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
I've been, have a question?
I just said I appreciate you as well, Dr. Dubois. Thank you.
Don't leave yet.
Okay.
I have a gentleman back there. Please come forward. You don't have to, you're not going to be sworn in. This is just basically a work session, okay? Information.
I just had a question for him.
Okay.
So I've been following the research of the University of Arizona on the heat islands.
Yeah, step forward to the microphone because we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been following the research from the University of Arizona on heat islands, and it's very, I mean, the data is pretty overwhelming when you look at what urbanization has done and compiling this with the climate change issues. Are you aware of any research or practices that have already been put in place specifically for planning that would combat, this heat island effect?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, there's it's actually something we're working on. Hopefully, we're going to get funding. We're actually writing a proposal now to actually formalize the connections between U of A, University of Arizona, and Nmsu, and one of the threads of that work, and it's the long-term work, is looking at how do we deal with the increased heat on our social systems, people. And yeah, there's a decades of work that people have done in Phoenix. They deal with this all the time. So we're trying to peel off some of that knowledge. And so what will work here in Las Cruces is Albuquerque, as well as some of the rural areas, and some of the ideas on the board is, shade is getting places that have shade relief. Well, trees are the ones that are, naturally, but we have to carefully choose the right species that we don't bring in a really great shade tree from the southeast, which we have done before. It requires lots of water. What will work here? And there's a lot of things, with how we plan out spaces is another thing. Utilizing our natural wind currents to cool, as opposed to making things real close together. There's a lot of research done to look at the impacts of even gardens, urban gardens, to as areas where it's permeable, but it's replacing the concrete. Because one of the bottom lines from our urban heat island study back in 2020 was the areas where they're hottest, were basically visible. You could look around and there's all concrete, overpasses. That areas where I-25, we cross Loman and University, there's more concrete now. So that stores the heat. And then it's that whole neighborhood around those, that we have replaced the cooling effect of soils with concrete and blacktop. And that's the consequence of urbanization, but there's ways we can mitigate it. And so how do we do that? So we need to have some what works here in Las Cruces kind of ideas. And I think I'm not going to tell anything about the proposal, but we're thinking of pilot studies and things working with sustainability in Las Cruces to kind of think through that, and as well as City of Albuquerque, their game in reducing some of those impacts. And it's going to be a slow thing because, we got neighborhoods that are already established. So how do we do that? And surprisingly, there's been some opposition to putting trees up. And, if we do it right and we show the benefits, I think we can get the community's acceptance. We may not get everybody's agreement, but maybe there's an informed consent that we can get and say, okay, we'll allow this. But we can show the benefits of it over time. But we have to get things going. And because, climate change it's going to keeps going regardless of what we do. And it's like we need to adapt and have plans, in the next 5-10 years to start doing these projects. Where are the areas, because we don't want to just do it everywhere, is where do we want to do the most sensitive areas, where it's needed, and then work out from there. a lot of people have thought about colors of things, the albedo effect, that's the reflection on roofs and things like that. I think all those help. There's no silver bullet. It's all kind of, you put these things together, shade, albedo, changing the surfaces, less concrete, more native vegetation that helps. I've gone through it with an infrared camera, just taking pictures in the summer, just comparing areas, and seeing how much difference it feels, just kind of and a big difference, between the heat on a corner on a major road like Telshore, and there's, the heat there compared to another corner on a more residential area with trees, big difference. And I think that needs to be part of it thinking of it not only in the urban areas, but also the rural areas, having that, not getting rid of all the vegetation. I know that's a disputable thing, about how we get a property and get rid of it. But I think there's a need for vegetation on desert areas. We tend to get rid of them. So.
Well, as you well know, in development, you have a parcel of land and you grub everything out of there. I've totally been opposed to that, but I'm not in the Planning and Zoning Commission for the city. I would like to be a member of that so we could stop doing that and maybe give them a better idea as to what can be done that would look and be very plausible for the people coming into the area. And again, degradation of that soil. And that's why I asked the question about is there an alternative for dust control other than just water? And I'm sure that somebody out there has information regarding that issue. And I'm sure it impacts major developers. And I understand their quest. It's a matter of money. It's a matter of being as efficient as possible and doing as expeditiously as possible. And I understand that issue, but we also have to make sure that we take care of ourselves as one. And so these are the issues for me and for Dr. Zerniak and the rest of the commission for that matter. And again, I thank you so much. The representative for EBID, do you have any further questions of Dr. Du Bois?
No, I sure don't. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you very much.
Joe, I got a quick question. So the precipitation numbers, they're basically constant. Annual average, yes. Except that certain times of the years, they're more intense. So on the trend, the 50-year trend, are those numbers, do you expect them to rise in precipitation or lower in precipitation?
Oh, you mean the seasonal?
Well, yeah, but you got a 50-year trend out there, from what I understand.
Yeah, this previous one was the total precipitation.
Right. So the average amount of rainfall is going to maintain the same, or if the changes the trend that you have coming, it sounds like it's going to get hotter or less, if you will. Are the numbers?
Even though even if it's flat, which is fine, but it's the thirst of the atmosphere. There's more evaporation. So on a hot day, we lose water, because we have to drink water.
Right.
Plants, same way. Soils, they also evaporate. So even if we get a good 1/10 of an inch rain, which is nice for Las Cruces in the middle of summer, that's going to last less time.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to add more of those 1/10 of an inch to account for the evaporative losses.
So it's not so much that we're going to lose precip, it's going to remain, but the evaporation times are quicker, and they're going to be more intense. And
So you got the concept. That's called aridity. Make it in an area that's more arid, you can have the same precip, but the losses are more. That's kind of the issues in some of the southern Arizona and Mojave. They get a rain and boom, it's gone one day.
So you don't see any, on the trend, let me say, on the trend, you don't see any increase in precipitation or decrease in precipitation? You don't?
Right.
Or you do?
Yeah, no, on the average,
It's going to remain.
it's about the same. But it's that falling at times when we don't expect expected. It's differently, our springs and winters are going to, for here, our springs and winter are going to be drier. But it's going to account, we're going to bring it up in the summer. That's the average, long-term average.
So the problem with summer precip though is that, especially if it comes in a dump,
Yeah.
you lose most of it, right? I mean, it goes back to the river or it evaporates. So isn't there something called effective precipitation? How much of the precip
right.
is actually used?
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
what's going to decline.
Yeah, it's basically, they call it, they analyze this according to the water budget. There's a budget, how much water comes from the sky, infiltrates down, and then where does it go after that? And it's a water cycle,
Right.
the whole thing, and it's that nudging that water cycle, more, that quicker losses from the soil down and more back to the atmosphere again.
I mean, if you're talking about a 5-degree increase by the end of the century, if you use your ratio, that's a 40-inch loss from evaporation.
Yeah, that one slide I showed. Yeah, this one. This is the amount of change in mid-century, so 2050, it's around there on average. We're seeing, right now our evaporation is, 76 inches on some of the areas and 28 inches in the mountains, and that's going to increase 3 to 9 inches by 2070. So that's a lot of water. It may not seem like a lot of water, but for a whole state, that's a lot. I mean, more water is needed just to keep things on keel, not make it flourish, but it's a tough one. We're coming to grasp it in the scientific community. This is nationwide, globally.
So you're saying we should plan for saguaros and palo verdes? Is that-
But it's that I've talked with some horticulture folks, and there still could be some really cold snaps.
Yeah.
And then if we got to be careful what we plant, we just move it in the climate zones. What works in the Sonoran Desert may still not work in the Chihuahuan, even our average.
Yeah.
But we can get hammered like we did 2011. That could happen again. Yeah. And then there goes all of our work in bringing Sonoran really good adapted vegetation that's even used to less water than we have in Chihuahuan Desert or even the Mojave Desert. So we got to be really careful on that.
Well, I have heard it through people in the community said, well, it's only cyclical. It's going to pass. And is it really? I mean, we don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, to address that, this change that we're seeing is only a cycle. I think we're ignoring basically the cause and effect the scientific community has gone through over the last almost 100 years. And it's not new. It's not new science. It's always been around. We've known about this, but just haven't really seen it occur. And really, till we look at it over decades, 30, 40 years, it's like, yeah, it's actually that scientific concept is actually playing out. And it's like, and it's cause and effect. It's not just the correlation. It's, that seeing cycles. I mean, we do see cycles. There's all kind of natural cycles out there. Some of them are long-term. There's this ocean effects that are out there, the Pacific Ocean impacts, as well as the North Atlantic. And we see those going on, but they're also going to be still playing a part in the future. It's just that this long-term thing is on top of that. these cycles, and we can get these Pacific decadal oscillations. There's a crazy one that's longer term, but on this climate change thing is on top of those big, 30, 40 year cycles. And then we got things like La Niñas and El Niños, which we're in a La Niña now. That's why it's so dry and less snow. We can get 2 of them at a time, and we'll likely see an El Nino come up, and then we'll get some good rain and snow. But, it's that's a natural cycle. But climate change, the current thought is that climate change is actually changing that. They're not behaving the same as they used to be. They're becoming tweaked, even those natural cycles. And that's a big concern, because that's called a feedback. It's like, modifying it's something that we can count on. And that's the current research right now is how does that occur? And I know I go to this meeting every year in January. There's folks that are doing that kind of work. And I look forward to actually being in person this year to see them and talk to them, the people who are doing the research. And how does El Nino change with the changing climate? And that's big deal for us because we're really impacted strongly here in southern New Mexico with El Ninos and La Ninas. I love skiing, but it's like there's no snow right now.
Well, thank you. But I asked staff to put a PSA out there and invite as many people as possible. And you can see the gallery, how many people are really interested in that, right? But we at the Planning and Zoning Commission are very interested in that because we have to make sure that the people that come into the area, that we accommodate them and the safety, health, and general welfare of them. And so therefore, for us, it's really important how we're going to be planning for the future for decades to come. And we need empirical data to substantiate our cause as well. So again, we thank you so much for coming. And again, if you have any associates regarding water resources, Department of Agriculture, please ask them to contact staff here so we can have a continuum of these discussions as we go throughout in the next, say, 12 or 14 months down the line.
Yeah, I'm glad to help. And I just also want to make a plug for on the Nmsu campus, we have a climate change speaker series. And if you don't know about that, then those have been all online. And we are still doing that. And we're planning on doing that. We have had speakers that talked about water. And I'll forward that to you all. And if you have time, most of those are on an evening. But we also record them. So that's another avenue for learning about. And we try to, some of them are not local issues, but some of them are local issues. And we plan on having some more in the spring. So that's another opportunity to learn from each other and to know what's going down.
And there's a lot of us here have attended your webinars. They've been very, very informative. And so we appreciate that as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Commission input. No commission input? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have a question for staff. With the Board of Commissioners, they haven't approved the cannabis ordinance yet, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so as soon as they approve it, with all the changes that they want to make and stuff, do you know a timeline as to when these producers will start being able to get their permits?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Herrera, I believe that's really up to the state. The state will be the ones that will be issuing the permits to grow. What we're doing now is regulating the time, place, and manner in Doña Ana County to grow, sell, produce, manufacture. We had a public hearing with the board 2 weeks ago, November 23rd. We got additional input from the public that the board asked us to address. So what we will be doing next Tuesday is presenting a few alternatives. But from my understanding is that retail will begin in April, I believe, of 2022.
Okay, I have, before we, on the commission input, I would like to address a very, very important information for all of us, including the county. We have had Luis Marmolejo with us for when we were even at the old courthouse. I don't know if you remember that or not, during the ETZ and everything else. And Luis, you have been very, very instrumental in guiding us regarding the UDC So many cases have come before us. You're just a world of knowledge. And if you do not desire to retire, I'm sure that there would be a developer somewhere in the county that would pick you up in a heartbeat, okay? You're just a wealth of knowledge. You're basically an icon to Doña Ana County. And from the commission and myself, I would like to acknowledge you as a key person, icon with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and for all the help that you have done for people that come petitioning their cause, from guidance, and not only guidance, a petitioner that comes in front of us, in front of you folks first, right? You're the first people to see it, guiding them into the right direction of what they can and cannot do with their properties. Again, from our side, the commission, and representing the county, we thank you for your services tremendously. You are going to be missed a lot. And when we ask something of you, you always somehow get back with us. And again, there would be no way to replace you as things go. I do thank you for your service, and I wish you well wherever you go. And just remember, you're only a phone call away, right? All right. God bless you. Thank you. All right. The chair entertains a motion for adjournment.
Motion and second.
Okay, we have a second on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you.
That was good. That was a good one.